Hi everybody, I'm Frank Price from FL Price. I am a consulting and training firm that specializes in guest experience as well as in group revenue programming like birthday parties and company, family events, parties, and so on. Sorry I couldn't be there today. Unfortunately, I had emergency family situation that it required me to be there, and family is everything, so I hope you understand. But this is a great program. I wish I was there because every time I'm there I always learn something, so I'm going to do the best I can to give you everything I've got. A return to great guest experience, that's what we're going to talk about today. But why now? Well, the biggest reason is that even prior to now, before COVID, even prior to that, it was always top of mind, or should have been, and should always have been prevalent in your business concept philosophy. But now it's more important than ever. Why? Because consumer disappointment is at an all-time high. And for those of you who've been traveling, maybe you traveled here to Indiana, you realized that travel is just not the same. We are sacrificing the basics for higher pricing and excuses that we no longer can tolerate. So ultimately, this consumer disappointment is what's driving, and it has driven it even prior to COVID. You just didn't know it, or it didn't have as much of top of mind as it is now because you weren't feeling it as much. Ipsos, which is an international marketing firm that also polls consumer trends and thought process, came out with this just a week ago. When a company raises their price, I immediately expect an increase in my customer experience. Agree or disagree? Across the board, all age groups agree. Now, we also feel the same way. We're in this inflationary period, hopefully not in a recessionary period, but it probably looks like it's going that way. If that's the case, it becomes even more important now that yes, we have to raise our prices in order to compete because of everything else and everybody else is. But at the same time, if we're raising prices and our excuse are going up as to why we can't deliver a higher quality product, that's not going to work with today's market. They also asked the question, when a company does raise their price, I expect immediate improvement in my company service. How does that formulate with income brackets? Well, you can see the income brackets that are most important to us, which is the joint family income of $100,000 plus, is really up there, but also the 50 to 100. So across the board, once again, right, everybody expects that the customer experience is going to be elevated if prices go up. Unfortunately, what we're dealing with a term called guest sacrifice. A guest sacrifice is, well, you're the best of the worst, so I've got to do something. And that's unfortunate because that was 15, 20 years ago thought process. So a few other stats is 4 times as likely that a customer is going to leave because of a customer-related problem that wasn't resolved, or customer service problem. 40% of all customers will say that they will go to another competitor based on what they heard their guest experience was. And the number one reason for people leaving, this has not changed, is feeling underappreciated. If you're too busy, if you don't have enough people, I can't find good people, it's COVID, the supply chain is not right, and so on and so on. All those excuses that I've been hearing, or we all have been hearing and tolerating, again, is becoming something you have to start to think about. I can't be the same as everybody else. I've got to break out of that. $62 billion a year is what's lost in lack of customers changing from one business to go to another because of a bad experience. So let's define guest experience. And if I were there right now today with you, I'd ask 5 of you to say, okay, write down what you define guest experience is. And if we read all 5, you'll find that each one will probably be different. It's very difficult for folks to understand. You know, they always put it into, well, it's when the guest has a good experience. But you can't use the words in the definition. You have to truly be able to define it into something that is understandable for you to be able to train and teach, and your employees to understand, as well as for your guests to understand when they get there. So let me put it into a simple formula for you. The guest experience formula is R minus E equals GE. The R stands for reality. Whose reality? The guest's reality. Unfortunately, you as the owner, as the manager, as the executive management team, or whoever else you are, you really don't count as much as your guest does. Right? So we have to understand, what are they perceiving the experience to be? Not what's you're going through, not why it's being caused or the excuses or what's out of your control. It's what are they perceiving when they come into your building or your park and they lay down their money for what they now expect. What is their expectation? If I'm going to give you this, I'm going to charge you this, it's like an airfare ride. If I set my flight for a certain time, well, I expect that it's going to be on time and deliver me on time that they said it was supposed to. If not, my expectation has been reduced, and I'm starting to get frustrated, or I'm starting to feel like that I paid too much for this. Until it comes to the point where we all end up, unfortunately, having to say, well, you're the best of the worst, so I'm going to keep going with you until somebody comes along who is better. So the reality minus expectation is what equals guest experience. Simple as that. Okay? That's the base level. Everything else we're going to talk about now, in order to elevate that, to truly get there, is where you want to differentiate or where you want to break yourself out of what everybody else is doing. The first thing in this checklist of guest experience is you have to have a defined culture. So you have to have thought about what your values are, what's important to you, and so on, and be able to communicate that on a regular basis and be able for it to be understood by guests and understood by your employees. You have to take a look at the setting. The setting is going to be what the tangible elements, your attractions of your facility or your park. In the past, this industry has been attraction-centric, meaning that if we put really good attractions in, the more the better, or the bigger, or the newer, or whatever happens to be, we know, and have been in this for over 30 years, that really doesn't work, and people keep circling around making the same mistake. We need to have the attractions, but it can't be the most centralized thing that we're going to hang our hat on and hope that that's going to be enough to sustain our business. Task mastery. We have to make sure that we have the basics down. The basics are that what we are offering, this is what we need to do to achieve that. So at least if the guest has a base expectation and the reality is that you are hitting that, well, at least you're at an average level. You're not above average, you're not standing out, you're just average. And if you think that you are doing better because nobody else is, so that average is okay, oh, please rethink. It's time to start looking at, no, we want to be above and beyond like we used to think prior to COVID. Before, we searched out for those businesses. We loved those businesses. We wanted to frequent those. It gave us a reason to return. This is why I want you to really lock into your head that we definitely can't settle. Then there's technology and efficiency. So those are the things that are going to elevate and automate to make the tasks that we have to do easier so that our humans, which is most guest experience is and engagement is human-based, human-driven, they're going to be able to have more time and more focus on those interactions because now the tasks are being handled by some of the technology and the efficiencies of automation. The guest experience tools, these are tools that are going to take you to elevate you to the top. They're the training tools you need. They're the things in order to have the predictable result in the end that you have to have written and have to be used on an ongoing basis. And then there's the actual training and execution, which we all unfortunately sometimes fail at. First, it's the training. One and done training we know doesn't work. It has to be ongoing. Two, the execution. It is a constant everyday process. So it should be happening every minute of every day, of every week, of every month, of every year, and so on. And lastly, it's management. So the leadership of it, as well as the feedback and the continual improvement. This is the checklist of what we need in order to get to a higher level of guest experience. First, let's start with culture. Culture, basically, is our why. It's how we do things. It's what we do, right? And one of the best cultures in the world has been the Disney culture. And sure, it's kind of roller coastered up and down with Walt's up and down, coming and going of different people. Right now, it's at a kind of unsteady pace because of the leadership is unsteady. But at the same time, it's something that they can count on. It's consistent. We understand it as a consumer. as their prices elevate, we can then make that judgment and to say, yes, we're willing to go there even though it is a higher price, but we know we're going to get what we're going to get based on what is the behaviors that are consistent, the language that's consistent, the beliefs that are all structured, as well as the decisions and the history and the traditions that happen. This all needs to be communicated to young people when they first come on your work team, so they understand and they know, can choose if they want to be involved. They can also know that we are like you, so we want to be with you, as well as it needs to be communicated to all your guests so they understand that you're worth what it is that you're putting out. Your culture has to be clear and purposeful, and that purpose has to be able to be communicated as if you were an alien. And an alien meaning that they know nothing about anything at Earth, but they drop down into your business and they understood why you did it. They understood how you were doing it, and they understood what you were doing because of the fact that they could feel it, or if you explained it to them, they got it. Next, it's the setting and the ambiance. These are some of the basics, but humans, as the way that we take in information is through our five senses. So we evaluate and elevate or decline every experience that we have in life based on our five senses, taking out what we smell, what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what it sounds like, of every situation, of anything that we do. The more positive those sensory impressions are, the more positive we feel the experience is. Now, at the same time, the more negative those happen, the more negative that we feel this experience is. And so we have to start looking at that from the standpoint of the what we are physically taking in our attractions and our tangible elements of our business, and make sure that we're taking care of that right from the very beginning. That ambiance is a combination of the vibe, it's the theme, it's do I feel like I belong? Is this a place where I want to be? Can I relate to it? It's usually the sensory elements that you're going to think about, and a company like Creative Works does a tremendous job with this as far as understanding the five senses and all the attractions they do. The lighting, the music, any of the props that are happening, and even the smells, some of the littlest things. Those are the things, or special effects, are what going to make a more memorable visit to your place. And it allows you to stand out, but only gets you again to the lower levels of experience. After that, we have to add and at least have the base, what I call position or task mastery. So we've put out a number that said this is what we are going to charge for you to come in and experience our attractions in our building or our park or whatever happens to be. And based on that, we're making a promise that this is what you're going to get for that amount of money and time that you're going to spend. So we have to take a look at that and say we're at least meeting that expectation from the perception of the guest based on what they've paid. So that means the entry has to happen, the money transaction has to happen. The simple things, the place has to be clean, it has to be kept up, everything has to work. The humans have to at least be friendly. They have to at least be attentive. They have to be there in today's day and age. So these are all the base level things. The food has to be tasty and served on time and so on. So those are the base levels of tasks that we have to accomplish just to have a baseline. Baseline at the very, very best is average. Then after that, we got to make sure that we are not causing friction points. And friction points are how we've either designed our facility or set up the way our operation works, or our beliefs that are altering it because we feel it should be this way. Or sometimes we do things because we copy what others are doing. We don't really know why we're doing it, but they're doing it, so we're going to do it. And then that causes these friction points with the guests. And as it does, these are the negative things or the negative emotions that come into the experience that work to actually bring your guest experience or your guest service down. We have to eliminate those. Now, the three emotions that come into play here, the ones that are typical in a business like ours, are going to be first and foremost, it's disappointment. We talked about earlier. Disappointment's at an all-time high. So we have to make sure that we are not part of the high, that we're working to fight out of it, let everybody else be average and below average. But after disappointment, unfortunately, the next emotion that usually appears is frustration. And now I'm here, I paid the money, I'm disappointed in what I got, it didn't meet my expectation, I paid too much for it, So now I'm starting to get frustrated. And now if I'm seeing things not work out or not available, not working, or I feel underappreciated, now I start to get frustrated. And as I get frustrated, depending on how frustrated I get, eventually it leads to anger. So it goes from disappointment to frustration to anger. We want to make sure that we eliminate that. And there's usually root causes. There's something in the way it was designed or the way we operate or the way we do things that causes these friction points. We have to figure those out and eliminate those. Next, we have to understand and develop the process. The process is just what we do in order to make that base task mastery happen. A good example of a process is a step-by-step process of how laser tag works. When they first get in, how they suit up, how they are vest up, how they are then instructed, the brief they get, and then also the instructions of how they play until they get to the game, how the actual game is turned on. So these processes will allow us to be consistent and predictable if we have them written down or understood. So every attraction, every group event, every department, whether it's a concession or restaurant department, it's the way your servers work, the way your bartenders work, it's the way your each attraction works. Your front entrance, how that works. When they come in, how the data is collected. Do they go to a kiosk? If they have, you have to have some kind of a form that they fill out. If you want them to have a waiver, whatever it happens to be, there's a process for it. Right? Then we add technology to that. Technologies can enhance and make our processes more efficient. The kiosk can make it more efficient. The way that our point of sale at the front desk can make it more efficient. QR codes can make our marketing more efficient. All kinds of different things can help us to be, if we automate and become more efficient in our base level tasks that we're accomplishing. Now our humans, creates that engagement and that interaction, that human interaction, they have more time to do it. The next thing we add, or we need to add, is the guest experience, or elevate, but we need the tools to do that. So the tools that we're going to use first and foremost, or that I use, are the performance agreement and the journey path. The performance agreement is a 3 to 5 page document that's win-win, means it's written from the mindset of the employee, but also from the mindset of yourselves as the owner or the managers, so that the end result is a win for each. And it defines what performance is. So performance is defined then as the parent standard, as a uniform standard, as a step-by-step standard for the minimum things that have to happen in order for us to master the task. But then it also can add the experience standards, what we expect young people to do to engage and interact with our guests, which is maybe unusual or more than what they typically would. A performance agreement standard for Chick-fil-A is going to be very different than the performance agreement standard for Burger King, right? You all know the differences. They expect more. They get more because they expect more. They train harder. They look for better people, and so on, and that's why it works. Performance agreements are win-win. They're given out prior to asking for the young person to actually be a part of your team, so that they can read it, understand it, and if they agree with it and they feel like it's them, they'll say yes to the job. If they feel like it's not them, then they won't accept the job, which is the best thing ever. You're not having to fight with them to try to get them to perform. They know right up front. A journey path, on the other hand, is a step-by-step process that defines each moment that a guest happens as they visit, depending on whatever they're doing. If they're just coming in to bowl, well, there's a journey path of, as they walk through the door, you can even start your journey path at the parking lot. What happens from each step of the way, each task that has to happen when they get to the front, how are they handled at the reception, how is their do they order or get their games? How are do they get their shoes? The next step is how the scoring is set up. How do they get to their lane? And so on and so on. And then throughout the whole process, up until the very end, until they exit, we now are going to define what's supposed to happen. And as we define this, it creates this understanding, because this is all defined through the guest expectation. It's not yours. Again, all the tasks we know we have to do. Now what does the guest expect with each one of these tasks? And then we have to meet that as a minimum standard. That's what goes into the performance agreement as well. But now we also can add during certain parts of that journey where we want the engagement and interaction to happen, where we want the emotional engagement to happen, as you can see from some of the charts here of what this looks like. Next thing is to hire personality. Unfortunately, the way our hiring has been, most people are using this as an excuse. I can't find good people, or I can't keep good people. Nothing has changed other than COVID made it a little bit tougher, but stop using it as an excuse. It's coming back. The kids are out there. It's you trying to hire probably in a way that is outdated and is not reaching this young group of young people anymore. But in our case, if you want to get to a higher level guest experience, you have to engage with personality. So they need to have a fundamental baseline personality that's willing to engage. So if you're driving the bus, the guest experience bus, you're leading it where you want to go, they understand that. Well, each one of the passengers has to be sitting in the right seat with the right personality. Otherwise, you're forcing the round peg into the square hole, and it just doesn't work. Certain people are going to be natural at guest interfacing, and others aren't. And it's okay if there aren't, because they have other positions, back of the house positions, that are fine for them. But don't try to put a very introverted person in a frontline guest experience position where you want them to engage, because it'll be too hard for them. And at some point, they'll either feel awkward, or at some point, they will just kind of implode and say, I don't want to do this anymore. Or you'll fight it along the way, but it's really been your problem for putting them in the wrong position. Every Disney character or every movie character is actually written in a personality temperament. The Ferret personality concept actually has, if you want, you can Google that. You can where this will pull out these specific personalities in the application process. And so now you know, and you sift through that, Mufasa makes a good server. His personality makes a good server. Woody is a great manager. Snow White's a great people manager. Didn't she get 7 dwarfs to go to work every day? Absolutely, right? And the best party hosts are going to be Ariel or Anna. Tink is kind of introverted. She's going to be behind the scenes as a social media person, and perfect for it. So these are all written in a way, by the way, that you usually relate to, or your favorite character in every movie is probably written in your personality temperament, because most our characters are written in a certain personality temperament with certain behaviors that they do naturally. Now, these personality temperaments don't necessarily ensure performance, but they certainly give them a much better possibility of them succeeding if they're in the right place at the right doing the right job. Here's an example of how a security guard, Officer Mike here, who usually takes care of rules and safety at a Disney park, but instead he's given permission to say, we want you to engage. We want you to go above and beyond. We want you to make your job better for yourself, but also for all our guests. So what he does is he looks for little girls that's all dressed up and dolled up, looking like a princess, and says, excuse me, princess, can I have your autograph? And then he has them sign their autograph on his book. And the smile, the big smile, and the joy, and then you can see over on the right-hand side the arm of the parents, where the parents are sitting watching this, and it starts to justify, well, that $120 or $30 ticket that I just bought for each one of my family members was just justified because of what this person did. Does Officer Mike do this to every single guest he sees? No, but to the ones that do, or the ones that are around it and see it, he makes an impression, and he does it when nobody's looking. It's not expected. It's not something that we're forcing him to do as a management. This is something that he has decided that he wants to do because of the type of personality that he has, and give him permission to make a difference. Once we understand and have all the pieces and the tools together, we need to put and do the training so it's ongoing. It can't be one and done. It can't be just the base, learn how to, get the person to the process of the ride, or how to operate the ride, learn how to deliver the food, or to learn how to cook the food, or whatever happens to be. No, we have to go above and beyond that. We have to start to look to elevate and put folks into a habit loop, so that it becomes, our training is ongoing, and then it becomes a habit. It's just what we do. And every habit that is built, right, is built on this loop, right? It's ongoing. There's a commitment both mentally and physically. We all have great intention, right? But do we actually physically take action? As well as it's built on small increments over time, and habits are built with positive reinforcement. So just like the way that these dolphins were trained to jump through a hoop, the idea is they don't have that innate in them. We have to start small with small increments. We have to reward along the way, whether it's the human craving of getting a belly rub or getting water squirt in the face or getting a fish or whatever that reward is. And then the cue is going to be the sign or the whistle or whatever they happen to be to get them to do the routine. So it all goes in this loop. Starts with a cue, routine, reward. It just goes on and on. Now, you can't just do that one time in training. This training has to happen ongoing all the time. And that's the only way that you're going to build a habit. It takes 300 repetitions to build a habit of a skill, that any skill can be built. After 300 to 500, sometimes with some folks, then it becomes something that just can be intermittently reinforced. But it's all part of the leadership process to make this happen. The last thing is feedback. And so in order to be able to monitor what we're doing and how it's working, surveys are a big part of what can happen. And with QR codes and the new technologies that are out there, it's very easy to get basic QR code to take to even to a Google form or a kiosk survey. How do we do? And don't be general, be specific with your questions. Online reviews can be bad or they can be good, depends how you look at it. If you get a bad review, you can also respond in a way that starts to teach or train the market, whoever is reading that, to understand why this rule is in place or what happened. Service recovery logs means that if you have something that is continually faltering, and it's going to happen, you're not going to be perfect, but if there's something that you can get logged in and start to look at and discover what the root cause of that is, now you can change it so that it doesn't keep happening. Because if there's something in the design process, something in the operation, or something that you do is causing this to continually happen, well, then you got to change it. It's a problem. It's a system problem. It's not a people problem. It's not an employee problem. It's a system problem. And then that two-way communication, or communicating with your team, they are frontline, experiencing this every day. Listen to what they say, listen to their feedback, and take action. They know better than you do, more than likely as an owner, better than you do, more than likely as a manager. You have to listen and take action. If you stop, they'll stop telling you, and they'll just do whatever you tell them or whatever they have to do, or settle at the lowest common denominator. So let's not make that happen. Listen to them and take action on it. So we do all these things, right? Our whole guest experience is going to elevate, and that's going to set us apart and make us different, and also springboard us. So if we do have to go through a recession and things are tight, well, if everybody is cutting back and being just as terrible, like in the travel industry, the hospitality industry now, well, people are going to start looking for other brands, and they're never going to come back to the ones that they left, even after the recession, even after when things are good again. So we want you to springboard out so you're constantly doing these things, even when it's tough, or when no one's looking, or when no one else is doing it. And ultimately it comes down to this. If you can win the heart of your guest, and that's a very, very different thought, because it's very intangible and it's very feeling based, emotionally based, right? So yes, we need the attractions in order to do that, but we need to, what's happening within that attraction? How are the humans enhancing that attraction? That's what makes the biggest difference. And then the wallet will follow. So that's it, kind of in a nutshell, very quick overview of what guest experience is. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. I wish I could have been there. I really love this program because every time I'm there, I'm always learning something. Next week, we have an Experience Academy. It's the last of the year. Russ speaks at it, and Sherry Howell speaks at it from CenterEdge. Outstanding speakers. It's a 2.5-day deep dive into the process of everything I just talked about. The step-by-step details of how to get to the end in each point along the way. So come visit or come see us. I got about a few seats left. If you're interested, talk to Russ or talk to Creative Works people. They're a sponsor of it, or any some of the other sponsors that could get you into the program. Love to see you. Love to have you. Thanks very much. Go out there, enjoy, and have fun. That's what this life and that's what this business should be all about. Till next time. See you later.